Imagine you're in the middle of a disagreement with a friend, partner, or coworker. Your heart rate goes up, your voices get louder, and suddenly the conversation is less about solving a problem and more about winning. Conflict is universal. We all experience conflict. But conflict doesn't have to be destructive. Research shows that when managed well, conflict can actually lead to relationship growth. And today I'm going to talk about how people handle conflict, why communication is at the heart of conflict, and what experts recommend for approaching conflict in a productive manner. Let's start by looking at conflict styles. Research shows that individuals all approach conflict differently. In a 2023 study published in BMC Medical Education, Gunasinghe and colleagues examined a group of medical students, and they observed that these individuals all approach conflict differently. Different conflict styles are collaboration, avoidance, competition, and compromise. Now, while these conflict styles are not inherently good or bad on their own, their effectiveness does depend on the context of the conflict. So, for example, a compromise works best in a situation where there's not a lot of time to sit down and approach the conflict together, whereas a collaboration style works really well in that setting where you have the time to sit down and work through the problem together. So understanding your style of conflict is really the first step in a productive resolution. Now that we've looked at conflict styles, let's look at the biggest factor in conflict resolution, and that's communication. In 2021, Johnson and Lott-Tayod published a study in the Journal of Social and Personal Relationships, and their study looked at the fact that negative communication, such as criticism and defensiveness, had a negative impact on relationship satisfaction, whereas productive communication more often fostered closeness. Similarly, a 2017 article in Current Opinion in Psychology by researcher Nicole Overall also looked at the fact that problem-solving talk often leads to resolution, whereas hostile or dismissive communication almost always only escalates the conflict. So how we communicate in conflict is oftentimes more important than the problem itself. So now that we've discussed conflict styles and we've looked at communication, let's look at professional and scholarly strategies that really can help us approach conflict in everyday life. So according to the American Psychological Association's Help Center in 2019, some practical tools that we can utilize in conflict resolution are active listening, using I statements instead of placing blame, and seeking compromise. These tools can really help us approach conflict calmly and respectfully. To expand on this perspective, Hydravi and Anshori published a systematic review in 2023 in the Indonesian Journal of Contemporary Multidisciplinary Research. And their review identifies the effective strategies such as a negotiation and mediation across multiple platforms, such as workplaces and even just in communities with our personal relationships. So together, these sources highlight that conflict really is a skill that we can learn and perfect. So in conclusion, conflict is part of the human experience. But as we've seen today, it doesn't have to be destructive. When we understand our conflict styles and we practice positive communication and applying professional and scholarly studies can really help us transform conflict from something destructive into something constructive. So when we look at conflict as a chance to grow and connect in our relationships rather than just a fight, that's really the heart of a productive conflict resolution approach. So imagine what our relationships could look like in our classrooms, in our workspaces, and in our communities with our personal relationships with family and friends if we all approach conflict this way. Thank you.